So tonight we're here to talk about energy efficiency, which for me is a sort of fascinating and also rather enigmatic discussion. It's enigmatic because we are constantly being told of the big opportunities in energy efficiency, but it's very few other companies who are realizing and investing in those opportunities at a scale that we're told is possible. We have to ask ourselves why that is. And many will tell you it's because it's not sexy. It's not a top-line revenue item. The CEO doesn't get very excited about it. It's quite an invisible issue. You can have a great strategy around energy efficiency and no one may know about it. It may be all in your plant, it may be in your insulation. But there are a number of companies who are developing very successful investment strategies. And in the survey on your tables, I talk about a FTSE 100 retailer who has saved £500 million in 8 years through a £100 million investment fund. Now that is sexy. And as energy prices rise, so do the number of reports coming out telling us about the opportunities. So just before Christmas, the Carbon Trust put out a report saying that big companies can save £1.6 billion through investments that have a 48% IRR. DEFRA 2 weeks ago came out with a report saying that £4 billion can be saved through investments that have a one-year payback. And McKinsey have dutifully been putting out a number of reports over years telling us of the opportunities. But I think what we're going to try and do tonight is to move from these big picture numbers into corporate opportunities and what it actually means for you guys as a company, a big company in the UK. And to help us do this, we put together a proposition, which seems to have disappeared. Well, I'm going to tell you what the proposition is. The proposition, I can make it up now because it doesn't have to correlate. The proposition is that basically there's a £25 billion investment opportunity, and that's drawn from conversations from these reports. Then we've taken 2,000 companies, which is the domain that we regard as holding that investment, divided them together, and you get a £12 million investment opportunity. Now, the proposition is that you can invest £12 million to remove 15% of your direct emissions and get a return in terms of IRR that is similar to your core business, i.e. a very good commercial opportunity. So that's, there it is. You see, I wasn't lying. That is the proposition. And we put this proposition to you in the survey, and we asked you how you felt about it. 9% said it understates the opportunity. 24% said it sounds about right. So that's about 33% are saying that they think it's correct or there's more than is implied. Then 4% say the investment size is about right, but the IRR is too high. 4% say the IRR is credible, but the investment size is too high. 2% say it's highly unlikely to be the case. And then 31% say it could be true, but I need more convincing. And 27% say I don't know. So I think there's a lot of unknown in there. But broadly speaking, people are very open to that idea. So tonight, let's debate that. We have a panel of 4 expert speakers, but we have a large number of experts in the audience as well. So please come out with questions, come out with comments. This is really designed to be an open debate. I know that there are a lot of diverging views in here. I know that MAC curves are a bit of a Marmite issue. Some people love them, some people hate them, and we'd like to hear from those who don't like them as well. And some people disagree on the size of the opportunity, and they might think that, yes, on paper it looks good, but in practice this is not, not possible to achieve all that we're talking about. So it's a debate. Please do debate. And at this point, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, and that is Marcel Brinkman, who is a partner at McKinsey. where his work focuses on energy, climate change and finance. McKinsey are well known to everybody here. They pioneered the Marginal Abatement Cost Curve, which has been widely used by policymakers. And we've asked Marcel to give us an opinion on the broad size of the opportunities in energy efficiency and to talk briefly on how McKinsey perceived the value of the MAC curve many years later after they gave birth to it. Marcel.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim, for the introduction. I'd like to show you a few slides, but I promise it won't be too much. Let's see if this works. Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to make one slide correction to what you just said. Is we didn't pioneer the cost curve. I think it's been a tool that has been around for quite a long time. Our involvement with it is fairly recent. The first one that we published was actually only in 2006. But I think the thing that stood out at that point in time was that there was no global one that went country to country, sector to sector, and displayed the opportunity for carbon emission reduction. Now, 5 years on, we have version 2.1. We're working on version 3.0 right now with more granularity from perspectives of countries and sectors. But we also feel it's a tool that has run its course to some extent, in the sense that the climate change debate has moved on from a debate that was very much focused on carbon reductions up until, let's say, the Copenhagen discussions, to something that is much more focused on where can we actually derive value from this. And from that perspective, I think that the topic of energy efficiency that we're talking about tonight is such a timely one, because it's one that combines a need to reduce carbon emissions with a practical sense of where we can actually capture value. So what I'd like to do in the 3 slides that I have is talk a bit about MAC curves in general and focus on the UK, and then maybe just stand still at where we are in the energy efficiency debate and some of the key issues that we see in our work with clients in the UK and abroad. So this is a UK version, or the UK kind of selection of our global carbon abatement cost curve. And what it shows for those who are less familiar with a carbon abatement cost curve is, on the horizontal line it shows the abatement potential, which is about 125 billion tons for the UK by 2020. And on the vertical axis it shows how much it costs to do that. In euros, it goes from 80 positive, where we've done a cutoff, to about minus 190 euro per ton. And that is the more interesting bit of the cost curve, because in essence it's where you can make money by implementing those measures. And you will find an awful lot of energy efficiency measures on the left-hand side of the curve. So if I look at somewhere furthest to the left, there's lighting, a switch from incandescent lighting to LED lighting, which is in the long run hugely cost efficient. Now, there are different flavors of this curve, and we've been criticized quite often by the fact that we take a societal point of view. So this is a cost curve that takes a 4% discount rate, doesn't involve energy taxes or subsidies, doesn't involve any transaction cost, etc. But we can run different versions. So the next page, which I'll show you, is a investor curve, as we call it, which is this one, which has a 10% real discount rate rather than a 4% real discount rate. Now, a couple of things happen. First of all, the stuff on the left-hand side suddenly appears a lot smaller. And why is that? Well, when you raise the discount rate, everything that is capital intensive obviously becomes a lot more expensive, so therefore there's less benefit to be had. Also, what you see is the curve as a whole is suddenly a lot shorter. We lose out in the order of 20 million tons overall here. And the reason is that we always take a cutoff at 80 euro per ton, so a lot of stuff has just disappeared off the curve. And in addition to this, there are a few other hurdles that you could essentially add to this mix, like transaction costs, which we haven't included, or some of the business model issues that I'll talk about in a second. So, in essence, the energy efficiency opportunity becomes a bit smaller. Now, Jim was asking, what is the associated investment opportunity? If we do everything that's energy efficiency in this curve, which is, call it in the darker tint of blue here, which is about 50% of the overall curve here, we would invest around 70 billion between 2010 and 2020. And that includes all companies in the UK economy, all residential buildings, etc. So the 25 billion number that you mentioned could very well be a good approximation of what's happening in the biggest companies in the UK. Now, in order for this to happen, there's quite a lot of barriers that need to be overcome. So what we've seen in our work with some of our larger corporate customers is that there's actually quite a lot of difficulty in implementing all those measures, even though they're economic. And the reasons are multiple, but one of them is definitely a lack of management focus. So if you are a manager, you want to put forward an investment proposal. It's focused on cost reduction, which in essence energy efficiency typically is. It's actually pretty tough to get attention if all the other capital investment proposals are focused on growth in more strategic areas. The second one is there's a business model issue. Because if you look at energy efficiency, typically it's quite tough to identify what the real savings are. Obviously, we can calculate savings in terms of energy efficiency, energy cost, and all of those. But to find a line on the P&L that actually says energy efficiency savings that you can then use to calculate the IRR on your project is actually pretty tough. And that makes defending your proposal often quite tricky. And then the third one is, in many cases, in particular for somewhat smaller SMEs, there's a lack of financing available. Because if you go to a bank and you say, I've got an energy efficiency project, quite often they don't have a special window for that or an awful lot of expertise in that particular area. So what we've seen over the past couple of years, and this is something that is true for commercial banks as well as some of the development banks that have operated in Eastern Europe, like the EBRD, is that energy efficiency is typically an add-on to a larger portfolio of investment projects. And that is the way to make it successful. So I'll leave it at this for now. I'm pretty sure that we'll go to debate a bit more later on.